Welcome into another edition of the Craft Beer Roundtable. I was hoping for a full group tonight, but unfortunately, a little bit of things come up as they always do in life. We might have another one joining us midway through. We'll just have to see how schedules work out. But we have a fun crew tonight for the Craft Beer Roundtable. We have Neil Witte, Master Cicerone, owner, founder of Tapstar and Craft Quality Solutions. Neil, welcome back.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
And then we also have, who even when he's not here, he still tries to pass along all of his knowledge, Bryan Roth, editor and writer at Good Beer Hunting and director of the North American Guild of Beer Writers. Bryan, good to see you.
Only 11 days left in my hard seltzer advent calendar.
How's that going? Are you enjoying it?
just so many black cherries. I'm running out of patience here.
Well, I guess that leads us into a perfect topic, because I figure for the round table this time around, we'll kind of be a little more retrospective, little look back. But one thing that I always find funny is, especially if you follow Bryan and some others on Twitter. Now, Bryan, it's usually beer is dead, but although there's a lot of talk about these days about seltzer being dead by some of the bigger media folks. So is it dead, or are they just really misreading things?
The tea leaves are in an entirely other pot is how badly they've been read the last 6 months. Every time it's basically every quarter, there is some kind of financial journalist who's writing a story about the death of hard seltzer based on the quarterly earnings of Boston Beer, and that's about it. There's just been a host of, to be quite frank, and I say this as a reporter, poor reporting about it, which infuriates me to no end. The fact of the matter is that, I think even if you have a passing interest in beverage alcohol, you probably got a whiff of these stories declaring to some variation of hard seltzer has fizzled out as the headline. Which is about as far from the truth as it could actually be. For the last 6 weeks now, we're in mid-December, hard seltzer has set a new record every single day for the amount of sales that it's done over the course of one calendar year. If you put it up as against other beer categories, it's the fourth best-selling category in beer, behind it'd be like Bud Light, Miller Lite, Coors Light, domestic premium, imports, craft, and then hard seltzer. And so I can go on and on. I'm sure I will. But to even imagine the death of hard seltzer, that is a nightmare to me. Just something people keep on dreaming up.
Yeah, you don't have to be a journalist to know this. I mean, you don't have to dig real hard to find out that seltzer numbers are still up. It's almost like a case where it's like growing like this, like straight up, and then all of a sudden it's like not quite straight up, but it's still like a rocket ship. And so everybody's, and like a big company over forecast and had to, dump some seltzers. So, let's run with the headlines. It's poor journalism. You see it in all areas. You see it in not just beverage alcohol, but all kinds of places. Somebody wants to be the first one to declare the death of some major category or something like that. And you kind of see the same thing about craft beer too. I mean, craft beer has been struggling, relatively speaking. But you look at what Bart Watson was talking about the other day, and you look at some of the numbers that are forecast for next year, and it's a category that's still growing. People want to say things are dead really quickly. They want to be the first one to say it. And they also, and it's sensationalism too. They want to get the clicks. They want to get the attention.
Well, I was going to say, I'm sure it doesn't help, or I guess it might help their perspective too, when you have the quote unquote parachute journalism into something that someone's really not familiar with. Because like Coors Light seltzer, that was discontinued. Was it Cacti that was discontinued recently, or they're going to just let it it go out. So I mean, you hear that and you go, oh, maybe it's not, but that's really not even close. Those are just some examples of, and those are actually some decently selling examples that decided to close down. Although I know Cacti was real quick and then went, boom.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
well, when there's 100 different entrants into a category, and 10 of them don't stick, again, there's your evidence, but you're not looking at the other 90 that stuck.
yeah, the broader issue with Cacti, and we are pretty much right up on when I would expect some collection of looking forward stories toward 2022, or right now, as Anheuser-Busch InBev announced that they were going to be discontinuing Cacti, some variation of these stories coming back again. The unique thing with Cacti in particular, though, so that's a number 9 selling hard seltzer brand family in the country. And that is only with about 8.5 months worth of sales, because this didn't debut until about April of this year. And so other brands had lots of runway. The big thing there too is you have to think about, so Cacti is being discontinued. There's also 2 lawsuits dealing with that brand right now. One is against Cacti by a small collection of consumers claiming that it erroneously leads consumers by using the word agave in the descriptor of it, suggesting that it's made with tequila instead of being a malt-based product. And then tragically also rapper Travis Scott, who was kind of the partner and celebrity endorser of Cacti, just had the horrific incident at a concert in Houston not long ago where 10 people died and scores of others were injured during a rush to the stage. And so even there, there is, he has his own legal issues, which then touches all the things that he endorses as well. So there's kind of a legal tie-up there too. But most importantly, if you look at what's happening with ABI as we go into 2022, they're effectively doing right now what Molson Coors did earlier this year with trying to parse some of their not necessarily poor performing brands, but just trying to figure out what brands they want to put the most steam behind. So, Bud Light, which is Bud Light Seltzer, which is the number 3 selling seltzer of the country. They also have Michelob Ultra Seltzer, which is the number 6 selling seltzer family in the country. And then if you just go one beyond the top 10, Bud Light Platinum is at number 11. And the way I describe it is like, this is the most ABI possible move that they could have done, where they just see 3 that are performing well. They see the names that are attached to them and figure brand affinity is going to carry them, which is not necessarily the case all the time for hard seltzer families. So much as, Molson Coors got rid of Coors Seltzer so they could focus on Vizzy. Constellation, which had, Corona Seltzer has underperformed, said they were going to reformulate the recipe for 2022. These are just different moves by multinational companies that are trying to set themselves up for a little more success in 2022, probably just because they either want to focus on what they think is going to do well, or just trying to trim the fat a little to let them do it better.
And then I kind of have an interesting follow-up, because we'll get into kind of the big stories, most surprising trends, and maybe what we hope to see in 2022 here in just a little bit. But talking about celebrity backed, celebrity endorsed, where basically they're the face of a product. How dangerous can that be, especially looking at, now granted it's one instance of, with Travis Scott, but I mean, there's others out there that can kind of probably be looked at as well. But how do you think, I mean, obviously we're going to keep seeing it because they tend to be working, and it's always nice to have that brand affiliation and massive social media followings, etc. But I feel like, do you think they're going to maybe look twice or think twice, before, pulling the trigger, so to speak, on these type of deals?
I don't see that. It doesn't happen very often that you have a celebrity that has an incident happen, or like something tragic like happened with Travis Scott, or something embarrassing, or something that just generates bad PR. And I guess there's, to a certain extent, companies are already pretty selective about who they're going to choose for their spokespeople and for endorsements. But fact is those relationships sell beverages. Those relationships, they make sales. I don't think anybody's going to be rethinking that strategy. That's been around for a long time.
Yeah, it's there's a lot to be gained from these, even if you look at it from like, micro influencers. So that's kind of like, people who exist in a direct specific space in social media to like, I think the Coop, a craft brewery out of Oklahoma, their partnership with Sonic for Sonic hard seltzers, that's really smart. Like that's not endorsed by a specific person, but it does come with brand affinity and a known quantity, which can excite people. The example that I love is, this is not alcoholic, but what's happened with Molson Coors and their partnership with Dwayne Johnson for his Zoa energy drink, which by all, data tracking is like one of the most successful beverage launches of this past year. And the reason I mention that is because on a whole, Molson Coors, a company, may not have to do much advertising, because anytime that The Rock fires up his Instagram stories that sends it to, whatever number millions of people, and a casual mention of that, like even if it's a small percentage who see that and either buy it for the first time, or maybe just get enough of a bump from hearing about it from, a person they admire, to maybe pick it up, like that's great advertising unto itself. And like that's also just not like, it feels very organic, and maybe a cleaner way of it all, where if you have someone who's an astute businessman, a worldwide beloved icon, like that seems like a natural extension right there. But there's also a case where like one of the best selling flavored malt beverages in FMB right now is called Lover Boy Hard Tea, which is created by a pair of reality TV show stars from Bravo. So you take it where you wish, really.
Yeah, and there's always going to be a risk, I mean, how many State Farm ads have you seen with Aaron Rodgers in it lately?
Yeah.
That's fair. That is fair. And with social media now, you never know who's going to be the next big thing and who's going to fall off really quickly with their 15
I will say, El Segundo out of California, years ago, they created a partnership with Steve Austin when he's still a professional wrestler, and he now does a whole host of pitchman gigs. But their Broken Skull IPA has seen one of the biggest jumps in sales over the course of 2021. Part of that is because it's now distributed far beyond California's borders, but that's also because Steve Austin has some affinity. People know who he is, and they have that attachment to it. And so, it's like there's plenty of examples out there. There's always going to be good and bad available to point to, so much as I think it's nice when we can point at something that just feels very natural, where it's an extension of someone's honest interest. It might not be, for all I know, Travis Scott may love hard seltzer, or just may have been a great business partnership for both ABI, and him. But there'll be examples like that all the time.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure Stone Cold Steve Austin really enjoyed beer.
Yes, famously so. I think it was like he was chugging like shotgunning PBRs in the wrestling ring, and then when he started this partnership, it was like, I forget what it was. He drank one of the IPAs, and it's like $2 million worth of organic advertising because he did it on Monday Night Raw or something like that.
I just love stories like that I see that and those make a whole lot more sense. Like I said, we're looking back kind of at the year, because it's December, it's the holidays, it's almost time to flip the calendar to 2022, which is terrifying. But what are some of the big stories that you all have heard of or can think back of on the year? Because I feel like some are good and some are bad, because obviously there was a little reckoning in the industry, and rightly so. But what are some of the biggest stories that you guys, or story that you can think of?
Well, I'd like to start with the death of seltzer.
Now I log off.
Yeah. For me, I think the Bell's sale, that was, I think, that was just that kind of came out of nowhere. I think you know, unless you were like paying really close attention, you know, you probably thought, you know, he had family in place. This was going to stay a family company, stay a private company. But the sale to Lion out of Australia, and Kirin is the parent company. That was pretty surprising, and then how that's tying up with New Belgium Brewing Company. You know, and I'm really curious to see how that develops over time. You know, I've been part of a large craft brewer, becoming part of another company and merging all of sales and marketing and the whole thing, and it's a long and difficult process. And it's going to be interesting to see how they pull it off. I mean, you know, when New Belgium sold, that was a big deal too, obviously, and to see the success they've had over the past, you know, year and a half, 2 years since that happened. I may be remembering the timeline a little bit wrong, but it's been a little while now, and New Belgium's enjoyed great success, and you know, seeing Bell's become part of that, it's gonna be interesting to see how that develops. That was one of the big surprises for me.
Neil, you're spending more time in like general on-premise spaces than I am probably these days. Is there something that you've seen from there that kind of have caught your eye in terms of taking the temperature of how things are maybe shifting or changing a little bit now toward the end of 2021 after some time of things being open?
You know, I'm seeing kind of a return to normal, more than earlier in the year. I'm seeing taps being filled. I know, you know, I've seen some numbers recently about the number of open draft handles, and the numbers is still pretty high nationally. But, you know, at least from what I'm seeing a lot more full handles than I was. You know, it was pretty normal mid-year to still see, you know, maybe a quarter to half of somebody's tap handles be idle with nothing on tap. The feeling is, you know, I get the feeling that draft beer is, you know, is well on its way to coming back. And, you know, like if I didn't know what was happening, you know, seeing some of the numbers and the analysis, I would think it was already back. And I'm still seeing some traditional beers, you know, that are in play. I mean, the one that comes to mind, I mean, I'm seeing beers like Two Hearted, you know, is still getting major play, where I feel like I'm seeing that on tap more than I did a year ago, or actually I should say 2 years ago, because last year didn't exist, didn't it? But you know, so I'm still seeing the kind of flagship beer on tap, but I'm seeing things being fleshed out a little bit more. That's if there's any trend that I'm seeing right now, that's it. It's just like a slow and steady progression towards things coming back to life. You know, and I'm seeing really kind of at least, you know, a relatively small sample size. It kind of feels like crowlers are like coming back to earth. Like I've talked to a number of retailers who are, you know, thinking about just getting rid of the crowler machine because they're just not selling it like they were. So, you know, I'm seeing a lot of that.
Yeah, one of the fascinating things that's come up in some of the year-end presentations that I've been tuning into lately, Lester Jones from the National Beer Wholesalers Association, he does a quarterly event with a market research company, FinTech, and he was pointing out the change in packaged beer being sold at bars and restaurants. And two of the biggest movers, beating a dead horse here, was the arrival of hard seltzer, which was supposed to happen in 2020. That was the big play for hard seltzer, truly, especially, was they were going to try to start getting packaged products into bars as well as on draft. They're starting to get traction right now, the last several months with Buffalo Wild Wings, which is mandating truly hard seltzer on draft. And so like these changes that Neil is talking about, I find really interesting, where, and again, this is going to be dependent on where you are and kind of where you go to drink. But the opportunities that are there for both kind of the old stalwarts that are holding down the fort, something like, Allagash White or Bell's Two Hearted, and the way that a lot of businesses are shifting to a very kind of modern makeup of what their tap list or can and bottle list may be too, because in that 2-year period, for a lot of places between kind of getting back up to speed to where there were 2019, like the number of products and the kind of things people are drinking are very, very different. And so even as that's happened, from what we've been buying in grocery and convenience stores the last year, especially, that kind of plays out. But have either of you guys heard of Best Made Pickle Sour Beer?
Yes.
No.
I've not had it, but I've heard of
this
it.
is, I misspoke. It is Best Made Sour Pickle Beer. This is, it's a beer from Martin House Brewing in Texas.
Of course.
Is, and I am not joking here, one of the most successful packaged beers in the country. It has sold, it's going to sell about $2.5 million worth in IRI tracked sales, this in chain retail stores. And I every year for Good Beer Hunting, we do this series called Signifiers, where we look back at a collection of people from across beer and beyond who have made some kind of significant difference. One of the profiles that I wrote for that this year is about Cody Martin, who's the co-founder and brewmaster at Martin House Brewing. That one beer has just changed the trajectory of that business utterly and completely, and has also created this really fascinating micro trend of pickle-related products in Texas. So, they've had this huge success with their Best Made Sour Pickle Beer, which has begat, Freetail Brewing has one now. Shiner just released a couple months ago a sour pickle hard seltzer, and you see it picking up a little bit around the country too. I do not expect this to be a large trend, so much as I do looking back at the past year. Like, this is something I do not think I would have expected to see a pickle beer. They make it with brine that's produced at Best Made Pickles, literally 2.7 miles away from the brewery. It is trucked from Best Made to the brewery, and they just hook the brine up, put it in their tanks, and use it. Like, there's just something so joyful about that being one of the biggest stories in beer of the past year that I love.
Yeah, and people are always, I think it's, when I hear stories like that, I just think that, these about how we've seen small brewers so consistently reach for that next thing, like, try and grab onto that growth, kind of chase that hot thing. And it doesn't matter what it is. I mean, the fact that it's pickle beer is kind of entertaining. But we've been seeing that with seltzer over the past couple of years, that small brewers who, 5 years ago, if somebody would have said, yeah, all these small brewers are going to be making hard seltzers in their breweries, you were like, what, why? But, there's enough uncertainty that just tells me that there's uncertainty in a lot of businesses out there. There's a ton of breweries out there right now, and there's still more coming. And, the growth isn't what it used to be with beer. And, beer's kind of getting its lunch eaten to a certain degree by some other beverages here. And brewers have beverage factories, and they're going to make beverages that sell. And it might not be beer, or it might be beer with pickle juice in it, or might be whatever, but they're going to chase those trends. That's just like, that's always what pops into my mind when I hear stories like that. Is it's just an indication to me that there's still some uncertainty with a lot of these businesses out there.
You mean they're supposed to make money?
It's also like there's something inherent, there are a lot of things where I think I often, as a reporter, I look at the business of beer or wine or spirits or seltzers, and that kind of guides the way that I think about the stories that I tell or how I chat with people about it all. But there is just something so like innocent about this. It's like, yeah, people found out that they could have a pickle flavored beer and they lost their minds about it. And it continues to be a major source of interest and excitement for that individual brand, for the brewery too, who have done like a spicy variant of that, a Bloody Mary variant, a grape flavored variant. Like, I get it. There's it's pickle flavored beer. But it also there's a small contingent of people who might think as much, but there's also I think, Neil, the way that you describe it too, and it's finding avenues to create excitement. It's creating trends in places that we might not have expected. Like, this is what we talked about craft beer is supposed to be when we were talking about craft beer 6 years ago. The kind of excitement it can create in a very real way. Cody and his team there are doing that.
Yeah, and isn't it kind of funny in that way that craft beer, you think about craft beer 20 years ago, it was all like this is a revolution. We're breaking down the walls, we're breaking down the barriers. There's no rules. We're revolutionaries. And now somehow there's these walls up now, these craft beer walls and these craft beer rules. And so somebody breaks out and makes a hard seltzer, or they're making an RTD, or they're making pickle beer. And people are like, wait a second, well, wait, where do these walls come from? You were the people who were the revolutionaries 20 years ago. And now, now all these gates have come up that you're trying to, no, you can't be doing all that.
What I hear there is that Sierra Nevada Pale Ale walked so Best Made Sour Pickle Beer could run.
Well,
exactly.
It goes back to one of our other roundtables when we were kind of joking, a couple years ago, 5 years ago, it might have been a cool, IPA or something that was what got someone into craft beer. And nowadays it could be a pickle beer. It could be a smoothie sour with raspberry, all sorts of fruits you never heard of in it. I mean, it's the door is just, I feel like it's wide open and anything's just allowed in, which is okay. Cause I think that's where creativity comes in, because now they have to be even more creative than before, which gets a little weird. You get those, the ones that put spaghetti in it.
Also Martin House Brewing.
But again, that was a fun thing if you actually knew what it was from. So I give people credit when they do stuff like that, because my wife just had I think it was a blueberry and coffee sour. I never would have thought coffee and sour in the same sentence even a year ago, and she goes, "This is awesome." Just to see kind of fusions of different styles, or stuff that you would have thought would have only been in a porter or darker beer, getting into something a little different is just kind of crazy to me.
One of the best beers that I have had in recent memory, I had a week ago, I think it was from a brewery in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, called Incendiary Brewing. And it was a chocolate, or I'm mostly listing the ingredients: chocolate, orange, coconut, imperial black IPA, which sounds fascinating, might be a kind way to describe it when I looked at it. But I could, the ingenuity it took to make that and make it, it tasted, those break apart chocolate oranges where you smash it and then it breaks off into a bunch of pieces, like Brax, I think it is. It tasted like that at one sip, and then the next it tasted like, a Wookie Jack black IPA, where, the skill, even if this is a one-off and there was some luck there, the skill to pull that off was incredible, in something I did not expect. And that is also something that with regularity I will never buy. But like that was a home run, and that was super exciting.
Yeah, it's so easy to screw up a beer like that. We get beers at, in certain categories at the judging table at like GABF or World Beer Cup or whatever competition, and it'll have all, you don't know whose it is. It just has the list of all the things. And sometimes you get these beers that have like 8 different ingredients, and you're like, oh man, and it's just a giant red flag because you get like 2 of them and it's all muddled. But every once in a while you get one where they just nail every single ingredient, and it's just this beautiful thing. And it's really something to behold when you get somebody who's able to pull something like that off with multiple ingredients that really work in harmony.
And then, we're talking about kind of the big stories. I also enjoyed, when we kind of got on this question about Bell's, I also enjoyed how many people don't realize who else is owned by a large company. And I always find that fun on social media, just to see, that not that I'm saying it's bad that they don't know, because that's not what you're supposed to be doing all the time. You're just supposed to enjoy beer, but it is quite funny to see who will yell at someone for selling out and then literally go buy, I'll go and say a Goose Island or whomever that's been bought for a long time. And, you just never know. And it's just quite fun. And
like I said, going to dig their heels in. I was talking with a friend of mine who works at Bell's just this morning, and he was talking about somebody that, that he works with outside the business that does business with them. That was like, yeah, sorry, we're just, we only work with independent breweries. And like, that was the end of the relationship.
And it has like really? 7 others that are not independent anymore, or considered independent. So with that thought, and I'm thinking we might get Lindsay on here in a second to join us, but what I guess this might be good to talk to Bryan about, because you look at all the numbers pretty much every day. I think you probably dream about them. Could be nightmares, I'm not sure. What was something that was maybe surprising to you in 2021? Because obviously it's not a normal year still. Things are still coming back around. It's a lot of stuff that we're kind of maybe getting back to the normal, hopefully. But what are some things that you've seen?
Yeah, looking back at the past year, it's I think the fun thing for me is when I've seen brands or companies succeed really, really well in 2021, where the comparisons to last year are really hard to beat. And that's because the way that COVID forced shopping behaviors. And if we look at, grocery store sales, for example, everything's going to be a little bit skewed just because people had to shop there. But I think I'm not surprised when I see basically everything across beverage alcohol basically down except for hard seltzer. Most recent 52-week period. So this is ending in November, looking at the same time period from the previous year. Hard seltzer was up like 17% and everything else was negative. Spirits was positive by about a couple percentage points. Hard seltzer was positive by about 17 points. I will say this, and this is, hard seltzer is one part of it too, but one of the main reasons that spirits did so well in this past year was because of canned cocktails, where you see a lot of churn for longtime spirits companies who are now playing a game that might sound familiar to craft beer lovers, where flavored versions of classic styles are really kind of help prop up sales. So Crown Royal, for example, this year will be the first year ever that flavored versions of Crown Royal will be equal to or outsell the classic, non-flavored Crown Ale Canadian whiskey or Crown Royal Canadian whiskey. And so similarly, the amount of money that canned spirit-based cocktails is making is helping to give that category a little bit of boost. And I think when we look at hard seltzer, as well as what we are seeing now from spirit-based seltzer, gives us a clear indication of the way that consumers are starting to think about, the kind of products they're looking for, and perhaps also most importantly, the way that they want to buy them and enjoy them.
And welcome in Lindsay Hayes.
Hey,
Lindsay.
sorry I'm late, y'all. I made it though. I was
All good.
we had a SIBA holiday party. So
Hey, all good, all good. So you know, Bryan, you touched a little bit on the it's so crazy to see how many people are kind of doing those extensions and doing some of the other podcast work that I've done. It was really cool to talk to Bespoke and Spirits, who has an accelerating on the spirits side. And while they're not allowed to tell me anything, even off air, all I can say is apparently a lot of the large companies have talked to them, which probably isn't a shock when you look at the data that you're talking about. So Lindsay, we're talking kind of the most surprising trends in 2021.
yeah, and
Anything-
it's funny. Yeah, I actually wrote canned cocktails. So the fact that when I jumped on, that was the first thing I heard. Of course, I was like, well, at least I'm not the only one that thinks that. I mean, like craft beer, it seems to be kind of the same thing. We're just happy to have customers at this point, because we're still not seeing the same trends that we did, before COVID. But definitely the canned cocktails. I mean, I know I have a few in my fridge that are just like vodka sodas. One's like a lemon, one's like a blood orange mix.
Black cherry, Bryan, any black cherry?
Black cherry. I think they're fun. I mean, as a bartender, like, okay, like I'll make my own, but I'm like, okay, well, if it's already made and it's already there and I can go, tailgate, pregame, whatever, and it's already made, it's kind of nice.
Neil, what's you're out and about? What's some interesting things that you have seen?
To a little bit to the point of what we were talking about earlier, with taps filling up and to Bryan's point, there are a few more seltzers and some alternate beverages going on. That seems to be growing. It seems to be the norm now. If you're putting in 12 draft lines, you're going to have one or two that are going to be for a cocktail or some type of RTD or seltzer. It's not unusual at all to have 2, 3, 4 out of 12 or more that are some type of alternative beverage. For me, in the work that I do, it's actually kind of a disturbing trend. I've talked with a number of people recently to relatively high profile places that I won't mention have had flavor staining in their lines because they're putting a flavored cocktail. They put a flavored cocktail on and they've got 75-foot draft lines, and now they've got one draft line that just tastes like pineapple all the time.
Okay, is that a problem though?
Yeah, that's definitely something that I'm seeing. And I'm trying to be very conscious about talking to people about those concerns too, because that's something that can really kind of screw your whole system up if you're not careful about what you're doing. That's definitely one of the trends I'm seeing. And the draft cocktail thing, especially a lot of people are starting to mix their own, do batch cocktails in corny kegs and putting them on a draft system to make it easier to make an old fashioned or whatever.
I remember, this is 2018, 2019. So even looking at the past 2 years that we've effectively lost, it's stuck with us in a way through. I remember talking, Neil, with people in those years about the then revolutionary change in bartending effort where they would pre-mix a lot of those things. So they'd still be making the cocktail, putting it into a highball glass or whatever it may be. But part of the prep for night service was to pre-mix as much of those things as possible to speed up that serving time and kind of help with that turnover quite a bit. And so it's like you can see the line being drawn from where we were, 4 years ago, thinking about, okay, all of a sudden, cocktail culture or interest at least is increasing. So what's the way we can maximize this at the bar? And then all of a sudden we've got this proliferation of canned cocktails becoming a part of everybody's everyday life where, exactly what Lindsay, the perfect point, like to not have to step away for 10 minutes and make something where you can can reach into the refrigerator, have something that's packaged, you know the ABV exactly, and you know it's going to taste good.
Yeah.
Like all of these things are connected. And I find really, really interesting as we look forward to, like, you know, what's going to happen next year and beyond, as each of these things kind of continues to level up, and just they're ubiquitous in the ease of which they fit into people's lives.
It is really interesting. And but I guess one question I have on the seltzer side is, because for most of them, they've kind of gotten an image. They're in the slender can. They you know, I just wonder, do they want to be on tap? Because I feel like I don't feel like a seltzer stands out in a glass at a restaurant or anything. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not going out as often as I used to now that I have kids. So, and a young child at that. So, I mean, am I wrong on that? I mean, or is that just something where, again, you were talking about, Bryan, the package sales are now involving seltzer at the bar, and they're being able to sell it that way.
Yeah, there's it's that kind of that badge drinking, you know, to a certain degree. You know, a lot of people, you know, a certain demographic in particular want to have that badge. They want to show you kind of what they're drinking, and a seltzer just in a pint glass doesn't show you anything.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you know, and I might be reaching here, and you know, maybe you know a little bit more about the demographic mix, Bryan, but my guess is that the seltzer drinkers tend to be more of the badge drinkers as well, and want to be able to display that thing that they're drinking to everybody when they're holding that bottle. So you know, I think that's an obstacle to having seltzers on draft. We talked about this last episode or 2 episodes ago. You know, are seltzers going to be successful on draft? I think that's one of the things that would hold it back.
Yeah, two data points, wholly unrelated. This is just kind of like throwing a grenade and running away. So if you look at where growth is coming from hard seltzer, I think it's something like half of the growth is coming from drinkers 45 and up. And so that's kind of playing catch up a little bit too. And so I think there's still some growth and play space there to try to figure out what that means exactly. But most importantly, and to Jonathan, what you're talking about, and to Neil, I would be fascinated if you could elaborate on maybe your experience or questions you've answered, because one of the conversations I've had with people who work in the bar space about the challenge of having hard seltzer on tap is the presentation. That, you know, you could put it over ice, I guess, but ultimately it's a clear liquid that's just going to look bubbly, where that might not be as enticing, you know, as you're drinking out of the can, you can't see it. And so one of the challenges that's trying to be addressed is, what does that presentation process mean? How can there be maybe a color or something that can be added along the way, just to try to make it more than just, you know, a skinny glass with 12 ounces of clear fizzy liquid in it?
Yeah, and I don't have conversations necessarily with people who are wondering about that presentation so much, but I guess the only related conversation we do have is about what it looks like when these beverages get foamy. So I might be getting a little bit weird draft geeky here, but it does have an effect on the appearance, because with beer, you get a little bit of active foaming, and there's proteins in beer that causes head retention, and so you get a nice collar of foam, and there's something attractive about that. It's part of the appearance and the appeal of freshly poured draft beer. When you pour a seltzer, it doesn't have the proteins, so you can get the same kind of activity and action with that carbonation, and you get that gas breakout, but it automatically collapses, and then you get this like kind of flat looking beverage in the glass. So the presentation does suffer from that. You don't have that kind of sexy color foam on the beer like you do, or
still waiting on
the
my
seltzer like you do with beer.
Waiting on my Spiegelau hard seltzer glass.
Yeah.
Now, Lindsay, you're out and about, you bartending, things like that. What have you seen with seltzers, and any issues about it being on tap and the appearance? Because like we said, it's, as Neil said, it's not maybe as sexy looking because it doesn't stand out. It's not like you pour a barrel aged beer and you're like, oh boy, that's dark and looks delicious. You know, a seltzer. Now, some of them with some fruit could have some color to it, but even then, it's still kind of like a watered down color to me personally.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm a fan of seltzers, and we have, like I said last time I was on here, we have a craft seltzery in Charlotte, which is cool. We at One Robot, we actually just got Untitled Art, their seltzer on draft, which is a lot more colorful. So when I know I pour it, yeah, it like has a nice like pretty head at first and then dies down pretty quickly. But their colors are not just like the clear. It's like, I mean, right now we have like a one location we have a prickly pear guava, and the other location we have a pineapple mango. And both are very beautiful, like a orange juice kind of color. And Charlotte's kind of I would say more like a fitness conscious city. So a lot of people love seltzer just because of it being low calorie or what have you. Even our beers are gluten reduced. So it's not like they're just looking for an option to not drink beer. They just want a seltzer. So I would say like for One Robot, they sell really well. The clientele is, I mean, as stereotypical as they do come. A lot of 21 to 30-year-olds, you know, fit women who are just looking for a lighter calorie drink. They just are like, oh, I don't like beer. So it's like, I mean, of course, I'll have them try a couple just to see if there's anything they like. But seltzers do well. And the amount of times like I just see people walking around with seltzer cans, like it's fine. They just look pretty and they look like they could be like a, you know, soda can or something like that. So Charlotte seltzers are doing well. I mean, with the breweries that we have, I still think beer ranks supreme. We have 13 different tap rooms / new breweries coming to Charlotte in the next 6 months. So we're pretty much going to be overpowering Asheville, which is insane. So I think beer is still king. But seltzer is just kind of hanging out there. People are still into it, and I don't think it'll go away.
And then to wrap up our kind of retrospective thing, we're gonna look ahead because you know why wouldn't? And because we're coming up on Christmas, a gift that you'd like to give the craft beer world, and that can be craft beer can be all encompassing. I asked Doug when he said he couldn't come on, and he said more breweries on TikTok. He just wants more breweries on TikTok.
I like that.
And so that's what he's shooting for, which is right up his alley. He does a great job, even Revolution Brewing and even his own personal account. Bryan, are you going to get a TikTok? Or are we there yet?
Yeah, I don't know if this is in the cards for me. Nobody's pounding on my door asking me for 1 minute long pieces of content. So I'll wait until that day, I think.
I would like to see 1 minute pieces of content from you, Bryan.
I would too.
I would.
Yep, you got 3 right here, and Doug would make 4, and I'm pretty sure Kinsey would make 5. So you're gonna have to do it. So,
I'm a little worried about like if you did it, like what it would do to my algorithm, but you know, I'm okay with that.
Really note it.
So who would like to go first on a gift to the craft beer, or basically what maybe you would like to see in 2022? Is it more, you know, more seltzers? Is it more, and you know, pickle beer, pickle sour beer? What would you like to see in 2022?
I love pickles.
I would like to see the craft beer community be more comfortable with doing whatever the heck they want to do. But I would also like to see them be more conscious about quality. That's kind of that's like what gets me up in the morning, is defending quality and kind of what we were talking about before about the draft beer stuff. You know, make the RTDs if you want to. You have a beverage factory. You want people to buy your RTDs, your seltzers, your whatever. Put them in the package. You know, don't put them on draft. They're going to stain your lines and you're going to ruin your draft system.
I would love to gift the broader beer community a full 2022 without IP theft. I would love.
It'll never happen.
I would love to wrap that up and tie it with a delightful little bow. I'm going to tuck a little note right in there from all the lawyers so they can focus on other more important things. I would love for Bad Bunny not to have to sue a craft brewery in Florida. I would love for Hershey's not to sue a craft brewery in Pennsylvania. I forget where it is. Brewery should be able to do whatever thing brings them happiness and joy, except steal the intellectual property created by other people.
Amen to that.
But haven't everyone else been doing that for years? All right, Lindsay, you're up.
I have like 2 answers. One's gonna be more serious. The other's gonna be more fun.
That's good.
I just want more diversity in craft beer. I mean, I feel like that's what I've been fighting for since July with all like rap magazine and stuff. I just want everyone to, if they want to brew, if they want to be in beer, if they want to learn, they should have every equal opportunity to, no matter what they look like, you know, who they love, you know, what they believe in, whatever. They should be able to, you know, do everything in the craft beer world. Also, I want breweries to make more money this coming year. I want them to all succeed and thrive, and I hope no one has to close their doors just because of COVID issues. I hope it's like a fresh year that everyone just thrives, whether they make non-alcoholic beer or cocktails or seltzer or beer or whatever they want, I guess. I just want everyone to do well.
I think that is what this time of year is all about.
Mm-hmm.
But and to your point and others, I mean, really, beer, alcohol in general is supposed to just be what brings people together.
Yeah.
Sit around a bar, tell stories, or a table, or at your house, or wherever. You know, I really hope to see more of that. That we don't have these stories of folks, you know, breweries gone bad, basically, that need to be called out, because I mean that's always going to happen. Unfortunately, that's the world we live in. Every business, you know, sector goes through that. But I also hope to see more fun collaborations. You know, we talked about this in another roundtable. You know, Hershey's and Yingling. That's a fun thing to see. You know, and I even see it because I kind of talked about this, I think maybe in the first or second one, especially where the worlds are colliding, is what I would like to say, of the bourbon whiskey world meets the craft beer world. And I mean, nowadays you see beer with, you know, Buffalo Trace, you know, bourbon barrels used. I would love to see more of those type of collaborations. The Four Roses and was it New Belgium, or New Belgium? Was it New Belgium? You know, that the Brooklyn or maybe it was Brooklyn and Four Roses, or Brooklyn and Four Roses and New Belgium, and I forget who. I don't know. Brain's going sideways here, but I love to see those things because you get to see some real creativity, and you know, it's fun when people collaborate, and that's what craft beer to me has always been about, is people helping out each other and collaborating and coming up with new ideas, because it's real fun to have these funky beers. I mean, granted, I'm drinking like a Mexican lager tonight, but I've also enjoyed, you know, barrel aged salted caramel, you know, from New Holland, Dragon's Milk. You know, these fun things that you see, and that's kind of what I'm hoping for. You know, I think those are fun, and especially like when you get two giant companies like Hershey's and Yingling to collaborate. That's just really cool to see.
I agree. And I think it actually brings more money and obviously a bigger market to the craft breweries. Like I did one that was Hardywood in Richmond with Sheets, like the gas station, and they do those couple collabs. And then I did French's Mustard with Oscar Blues. So like, I think it's fun.
That one.
Yeah, I got to, I mean, it was like, I mean, I think it was like a white ale, just had like coriander, salt, and orange peel. But those are fun because it's like you tap into markets that aren't craft beer people, but they're more intrigued, just like, all right, what's the deal here? I want to try this. Why does this have peach rings or watermelon rings from a gas station in this beer? But I feel like there's more money behind it to help that brewery, you know, get their name out, but also makes it fun, something that they would normally not do.
And Brian, that goes back to your favorite beer that you just love, the Best Made.
It's meant to be.
Which I just love that. And I guess to wrap it all up, is there anything else that we would like to just mention from 2021 and before we, you know, say cheers one last time?
Good riddance. No, I'm just kidding.
Die Hard is a Christmas beer.
let's keep this trend going away from 2020. 2021 was like a little improvement. Let's continue the trend.
I would love to see that. I hope people get out. I have noticed more people out in Lexington, where I live in Kentucky. I hope others get to get out and enjoy a beverage of whatever they choose. I always like to say, drink what you like with who you like. So Lindsay, Neil, Bryan, I appreciate it as always. Kinsey, Doug, I hope everything is going well for y'all, and we will hopefully see everyone, maybe fingers crossed, in 2022.